quote the great Lou Brown from Major League, quote, if we go out there and win tomorrow, it's what they call a winning streak, unquote. The BYU Cougars face off against Stanford tomorrow night, looking to make it 2 in a row against the Cardinal.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer at the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider as your host here on this podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. All right, coming up on today's show, we're previewing Stanford and BYU, giving you the tale of the tape, players to know, and everything you need to know ahead of the matchup tomorrow night at LaVell Edwards Stadium. Then we're going to talk about a change in the NCAA calendar that I think is not necessarily in the athlete's best interest, and that is a single window for the transfer portal coming in January. Yeah, we'll get into that, and then we'll finish up today's show with our Big 12 Big Pick segment, making my picks of who I think is going to win this weekend in the Big 12 and beyond. So we'll get to all that ahead on today's show, and it's all brought to you today by our friends over at FanDuel, where right now, if new customers bet just $5, you get up to $300 back in bonus bets. Go to FanDuel or download the FanDuel app today to get started. All right, BYU Stanford tomorrow night. The Stanford Cardinal had a rare week 1 bye after playing week 0 and getting beat at Hawaii. They come to BYU, and our friends at FanDuel have them as solidly a 3-score underdog in this matchup, and they're expected to be very much a one-sided affair in this game. Now, the more I look at this and the more I kind of study up on Stanford is, yes, there's always progression from game 1 to game 2. And a lot of people have been pointing that out to me as I've talked about my confidence level in BYU being able to handle the Stanford Cardinal. But for some reason, while they quote that Stanford, hey, they can make a lot of progress. They had a bye week. They have extra time to prepare for BYU. Why can't BYU improve from week 1? Yeah, Jay Hill and others have said it's about as clean of a game BYU's played under his tenure as the defensive coordinator at BYU. But you can improve from week 1 to week 2 on BYU's side of things. And if they do that, well, the transitive property, considering that Hawaii beat them in week 0, Arizona pummeled Hawaii 40-6 last week. So if you do the transitive property, BYU should be a major favorite against the Stanford Cardinal. This is a Stanford team that is very much in flux right now. They've got a 1-year head coach in Frank Reich. It's an interim, but not actually called an interim coach. Maybe he is. The thing is, they're kind of spinning their wheels right now while Andrew Luck tries to figure out what the next step or steps are for this program. But they are a Power 4 program. They have Power 4 caliber players, and they will bring those players to LaVell Edwards Stadium tomorrow night, and they will do their absolute darndest to control the line of scrimmage, control the time of possession, and make this a low-scoring, grinded-out, slugfest type of a game, at least from my vantage point. Ben Gulbranson is expected to be their quarterback. Could they throw a guy like Elijah Brown, who's a highly thought-of 4-star prospect out there, in a change of pace? Maybe so. Maybe they got something up their sleeve. But looking at it, Stanford's best bet in this game, in my opinion, and we talked with Ben Parker yesterday from CardinalSportsReport.com. If you missed that, go back and watch it. Make sure you're an everydayer, by the way, and you can get his inside intel. He talked about the fact that he thinks it's going to be a game where they're going to really have to grind it out. He said there were 2 big drives against Hawaii where Stanford put together 10-plus plays, ground a lot of clock, finished it off, and that's what they're going to have to do against BYU. Well, let's put it this way. I would take BYU's defense 10 times out of 10 over the Hawaii defense right now. So I expect the BYU will be much more formidable to run against than the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors are. BYU will be ready for this. They obviously have less time to prepare because they played last week, whereas Stanford played 2 weeks ago. But I am not all that concerned about Jay Hill's capability of having this game plan in place. And quite frankly, if they were game planning for Stanford during their preparation for Portland State, I wouldn't have been surprised because Portland State, they were completely overmatched, and you probably could have spent half the week preparing for the Cardinal and still won that game handily. The nice part is this is a BYU squad that, from my perspective, looks very much locked in, and they are not going to overlook Stanford. The names to know from the Stanford Cardinal include their running back, Bryce Ford. I think he is far and away their best weapon offensively. He's a very, very strong runner, and if given the opportunity to break one, he absolutely will make BYU pay. They have a pretty big and gnarly offensive line. It's not some of the offensive lines they've had in the past, but they've got some good offensive line play. And they've got 2 tight ends in particular, speaking of Stanford, that I would be wary of if you're a BYU fan. Those are Sam Roush, and I'm trying to get the other name here, of Chico Holt, which is, by the way, 2 great names. Sam Roush, Chico Holt. They're both big-bodied tight ends, and guys like a Tanner Wall, like a Tommy Prassis, Raider DeMooney, the linebackers for BYU, Isaiah Glasker, Jack Kelly, Celia Sarah, Che Bryant Struther. They're going to have to be able to match up with those guys on receiving downs and make sure that they don't find any daylight to allow a guy like Ben Gulbranson to find them open. Ben Gulbranson was absolutely horrific, I thought, against Hawaii. And quite frankly, I would have been less than surprised had they decided to bench him. But according to guys like Ben Parker, we also caught up with Troy Clardy, the play-by-play voice for Stanford, on the radio this week at the KSL Sports Zone. They said it's Ben Gulbranson. He's going to be the guy under center for Stanford, it appears. So BYU's whole thing is let the defense go out there and cook and make sure that they do not give daylight or any hope to the Stanford Cardinal. On the flip side, BYU offensively, we're going to see the next step in the progression of Bear Bachmeier. Now, this is a much, much more capable defense. Speaking of Stanford, they've got some very, very talented players on the defensive side of the football. Matt Rose led them with 13 total tackles against Hawaii. He also had a sack in that game, so he is a name to keep an eye on. He's a linebacker. They've got some decent corners in Aaron Morris and Jordan Washington, and then Clay Patterson. He had, I think it was 2 sacks. Yeah, 2 sacks against Hawaii. Those are names to absolutely monitor if you're a BYU fan. But what I'm expecting from BYU is more of the same of what they did last week, where they're going to run the ball down Stanford's throat. BYU, I know that their history is they throw the ball all over the field. Aaron Roderick, when he's had his best offenses at BYU, they have been balanced and they have been capable of just gashing opposing teams with the run game. With LJ Martin, Sione Moa, and the complement of running backs that BYU has, that is what they need to do in this game. BYU's offensive line's got to open the holes, and they need to absolutely dominate the line of scrimmage and allow a guy like Bear Bachmeier to settle in and go in play action and just absolutely rip it up that way. It's a lot to ask a young man like a Bear Bachmeier, no matter how good he is, because Aaron Roderick's been effusive in his praise for him, saying that he's given him a lot of checks and he's handled everything they've thrown at him so far since arriving in Provo, and he's handled it well. But it's still a lot to tell a guy, okay, you're going to have a 5-step drop here, scan the field for 4 or 5 reads and make the right decision. That's some of the progression we're going to need to see over time. But from game 1 to game 2, that's not the progression I'm expecting. Aaron Roderick is going to make it as easy, the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid, is the KISS method for Bear Bachmeier. And that is have a power run game that takes a lot of the stress off him and let him thrive in play action. Bear's very good with his feet as well. And any of you who have a chance to see him up close and personal, I've seen him at practice. The one thing I think belies why he is so good right now is that he's got a well-developed lower body. His calves, his thighs, they look like a linebacker or a running back. And that is going to give him an opportunity to really play at a high level because he's got a well-developed frame, a well-developed body for a 19-year-old freshman. And that's something that a lot of guys come in, need to go through weight training to obviously build up their body. So Bear's already got. He's got a God-given gift in that respect. And I would expect the BYU's whole philosophy here is run the ball, and then let Bear cook and play action or in quick 3-step drops. You're not going to obviously drop in 7-step drop and say, okay, now scan the field and make the right decision in pass coverage. Eventually he'll get to that level. That's the progression that you want to see from him in time. But right now, continue to make it as simple as you can on him and have the weapons around him. Guys like Chase Roberts, Carson Ryan in the passing game, JoJo Phillips, Parker Kingston, etc. They've got to do their part to step up. But I really think BYU holds a decided advantage in this game. And I'm not surprised that our friends at FanDuel have had this as high as an 18.5 line in favor of the Cougars. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about a change that the more I think about it, I think it's an absolute failure on the NCAA's part, and it hurts student athletes more than some may make you believe that it's going to help them. And that is the transfer portal, maybe going to a single window, and it's happening in early January. Yeah, we'll try and make heads and tails of that next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at DoorDash. Now, DoorDash is here for you guys because it's almost the weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by our friends at DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash streak, saving on every time you order. These players deliver when it mattered most. Let's break it down. So, for the BYU Cougars this week, we are going with Jack Kelly. Absolutely ignited BYU's eventual romp over Portland State with that scoop and score off the blocked field goal. Also, big credit to John Tamoya-Peau, who had a fantastic game in his own right, blocking said field goal. But that's really got BYU going with no hesitation and no delay. And if you've been watching all week after week, going back to last season for guys like Jack Kelly, it's no surprise that performance is not a fluke. They're absolutely dominant. And just like Jack Kelly delivered for BYU, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash streaks. You can save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season long, save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, fuel your game day, and do it only with DoorDash. Terms apply, and the promo period runs through November 18th. Once again, get started with our friends over at DoorDash. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. Now, Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every single detail. You can feel in the moment you get behind the wheel, the smooth handling, intuitive controls, and the standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. And whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes even everyday drives feel special along the way. It's the small details that make the big plays, and just like there's more to every player, there's more to every Mazda vehicle. Check it out today with our friends over at Mazda. Move and be moved. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. A big thank you to all of you for your support this week. It's absolutely marvelous. We crossed the 13,000 subscriber threshold on YouTube, and we have had an incredible run this past year in particular here with the Locked On Cougars podcast. So thank you for all of your support. Please continue to subscribe, like the show, rate, review, leave your comments, good, bad, or indifferent. Any and all interaction you guys give to this fine program is appreciated. And truthfully, thank you for your support. All right. Let's talk about a new proposal from the NCAA. It's not quite firmed up yet. It's not actually on the books, but it looks like it's inevitable that it's going to happen. And that is that the NCAA has voted for a single football transfer portal window. Now, this window would happen in January, right in the middle of the college football playoff. It'll be a 10-day period that opens on January 2nd of next year, 2026, one day after the college football playoff quarterfinals are completed. So semifinals and a final to be played, and the Division I Administrative Committee must approve this legislative change before it can take effect. But that vote is expected to occur before next month, October 1st. Now, this is the interesting part about this, because the committee is also proposing making in the entire month of December a recruiting dead period. That would mean coaches could still have contact with recruits, but they're not permitted to do on or off-campus recruiting visits, recruiting visits or evaluations, which has been a hallmark of what December is usually entailed for a lot of these coaches. A lot of coaches have been fed up with kind of the convoluted nature of what December turns into, because you're recruiting high school players, transfer portal, bowl preparations, finals. There's a lot going on in the month of December, and they wanted to take some of the things off their plate. But the problem is, I look at this as a net negative for the players involved, because think about it. If they get through finals, which a lot of finals, very rarely do you have a final that extends past Christmas for any college athlete. So you get done with your finals, then you go home for the Christmas holiday, and then you're probably thinking, okay, what's my future hold in college football? And then January 2nd, bam, you got to make your decision if you're going to go in the portal over the next 10 days. That obviously is a problem, because programs and universities like BYU, well, they start their winter semester in early January, right when this portal window is opening, in theory. I look at this, and the other thing about it is the spring portal that has been open has been kind of the big bugaboo that coaches have been bemoaning. Guys like Bronco Mendenhall closed down literally every facet of spring ball this past year to avoid anybody, I'm talking about anybody, getting eyes on his athletes with the chance that the spring portal window opens. They get enticed to enter the portal. And it happens. There's enticements, and then they leave and hurt Utah State. He shut it down. Other coaches have followed a similar path. BYU, I think, looks at this, and I'm sure that Kalani Sitake, he likes the idea of streamlining the calendar to allow for that single portal window. But I look at it from the athlete perspective. This is a really, really bad deal, because once again, it's a 10-day window. You got to make a determination on what your future is going to hold right then and there. And then you're stuck until the next year. No matter how things go in spring ball, if you decide to stick around, your coaches are telling you, hey, we believe in you, son. Come play for us. We'll see how spring ball goes, and we'll make sure that you have an opportunity. And then spring ball comes. Let's say you don't get that opportunity and you feel burned by those coaches. Well, guess what? You're stuck until the end of the entire next season before you can really do anything about it. So I look at this and say, okay, I understand why the coaches want this, because once again, it gives coaches more control of their rosters. And that, let's be honest, that's the kind of the whole deal with this is coaches. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing per se, but coaches want control and they want to be able to control their rosters as much as possible. I understand all that, but having player movement, the freedom of player movement, it's been a major boon to not stabilizing, but to leveling the playing field in college football. The likes of Alabama and the big bad SEC, their days of dominating the sport feel like they're teetering. And I'm sure that their coaches are all about something like this, where it once again provides stability with their rosters, where they can hook guys, keep them in their programs for longer. Previously, with the 2 portal windows, and the portal windows actually used to be much longer than before. I think, last year the winter transfer portal was December 9th through the 28th. So 3 full weeks roughly, the window being open. And then the spring portal window was a 10-day window. It allowed guys to have the freedom of movement after the season and obviously after spring ball to make the decision of what's best for them. That's where I come down on this. I'm on the side of the athlete. And I understand, once again, why coaches, administrators, university officials, and the like would like to have this calendar shortened up and make it a smaller window. Because obviously, like I said, it streamlines the whole process of keeping guys in school, on these rosters, in these programs, and obviously keeping the continuity rolling. But once again, this is a multi-billion-dollar entity that has been built on the back of these athletes. And I'm not saying that the athletes are hurting, because trust me, with NIL in play now, the expansion of the revenue sharing and everything, athletes are making more money than any other era of college athlete out there has ever made. But still, there's just some small part of me that says this is a bad thing. And if I'm the players, if I have a say in this, I'm telling the NCAA, hey, pump the brakes on this. You got to consider what it's going to do to the sport and to what we want as athletes. I don't know. Maybe I'm up in the night about this, but I read this and say, okay, I understand why everybody, speaking of them from the university side of things, coaches, administrators, the people running the universities, they want this. Because once again, it gives them more control and kind of more of a stronger hand on the leash, as it were, of keeping players in their program. But man, I understand that December was a really tough time, but let me issue a proposal before you guys say, well, what do you propose, Jake? There needs to be 2 windows still, but you know what the windows need to be? They need to be during the summer and then after the season still. Now, does it need to be here in January? Maybe so, because once again, I think these coaches are being overwhelmed with how crazy the month of December can be. Like I said, with practices, finals, transfer portal, the early signing window for high school athletes, etc. Yeah, there's a lot on their plate during that window, in addition to the fact that it's the holiday season. But I also look at it and say, hey, maybe you should open that window up in the summer at some point to allow these athletes, maybe before training camp. Maybe you do it in June or something like that. Then it creates more problems because these coaches, once again, you still have the player movement. But I think you still need to have 2 windows. Maybe it still needs to be after spring ball. There's no right answer in all of this, but you can't expect me to believe that football players out there, and this may extend to other athletes in the transfer portal era, are going to say, you know what? We've had freedom of movement twice a year since you guys instituted the transfer portal here. Oh, and now you're going to nix it and makes it a 1-day, not a 1 day, a 10-day window in the middle of, the beginning of January. Tough sell if I'm speaking from the athlete's perspective, but maybe the athletes are all for it. I really don't think that this has been well thought out from at least everybody's best interest side of things. Once again, the coaches, they voted unanimously for this. And I get why, because once again, it gives players and coaches, it gives them more time to focus on finishing their season while preserving the opportunity for players to transfer to their new school for the spring semester. But BYU, I think their winter semester, doesn't it start like right after New Year's right there? That's going to be really tough because you're going to have guys wanting to hit the portal, and they're going to be kind of lingering out there because once you enter the portal, doesn't mean you immediately have to come out of the portal. You can be in the portal for a matter of weeks, days, hours, however long it takes to find your next opportunity. And when you find that next opportunity, how quickly can you get enrolled? Do you have to wait until spring term begins? Do you have to finish out that winter semester at your previous university? Once again, I just don't see this being the right thing for all parties involved. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Sound off in the comments and let me know if I'm up in the night. But I just don't see where this is a positive, especially from the athlete side of things, to narrow this into just one window. Now, that 10 days, it'll be absolutely explosive because you'll have even more athletes jumping in the portal in a much smaller time frame. But still, it doesn't sit right with me in terms of the freedom of player movement we've had for quite some time, and then willingly giving back some of that control to the administrators, the coaches, and the like, who have really kind of been the lords of the manor in that respect for decades before that. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about my picks for the weekend, the games in the Big 12 and a couple of games nationally. We had an interesting week last week. We'll recap how last week went. This is going to be a week-by-week thing. We call it Big 12 Big Picks, and we get to it next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, the NFL season kicked off last night, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with everything else going on this weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customer bet just $5, and when your first bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. The best part is you can use FanDuel however it fits you to best bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, catching live action as the game unfolds, makes every game more exciting whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. And the best part is it's quick, easy, and best way to add an extra energy to your Sundays on the couch watching football. So you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app today by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, $300 in bonus bets, courtesy of your friends over at FanDuel. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at I got the wrong thing pulled up. Upside. Now, Upside is here for you guys to get you the gas. If you're paying full price for gas, it's a chance to save some money. Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up, and do it with our friends at Upside. The best part about Upside is you simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use our limited time promo code football and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. Think about that. At first, you may think it's too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting real money just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out at any time to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card to Amazon and other brands. Do not let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using the promo code football. It's for a limited time. For a limited time, 25 cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code football, courtesy once again of your friends over Upside. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. But once again, use that promo code football with the Upside app. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. All right, it's time for Big 12 Big Picks, and another reminder for you guys, if you guys want the inside intel on BYU in particular, join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. The link is in the show notes below. It's a 14-day free trial. If you sign up today, just $5 a month to get the inside intel you crave that comes to your phone in the form of a text message. So join us today and be a part of the growing community in the Locked On Cougars Insider Group, and we're having a great time over there, chit-chatting back and forth via text message. So it's a fun way. I hope that many more of you sign up in coming days and weeks. All right, as I mentioned, it is time now for Big 12 Big Picks. It is my picks of the college football weekend in the Big 12 and some of them beyond that. But the thing I look at this weekend is there's a lot of big games for Big 12 teams to rehabilitate the image of the conference nationally. Now, are they intersectional matchups with the top dogs in the college football world? No, but they are opportunities out there for programs to strike fear into the hearts of the nation. The first one is the Cy-Hawk Trophy. It's Iowa versus Iowa State. We got big noon kickoff there in Ames. Now, Iowa State off to a solid start this year. They're 2-0. They beat Kansas State over there in Dublin, then had the FCS win last week over South Dakota, if I recall correctly. Give me the Cyclones. Iowa, man, not necessarily a very impressive win last week, I should say, for the Hawkeyes, but give me Iowa State to bring home the Cy-Hawk Trophy. That may be a kiss of death because this has been a crazy rivalry over the years, especially when Iowa State's been at home. But give me Matt Campbell and the Cyclones to win that one. I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Now, Baylor plays an in-state foe in the ACC opponent, SMU, who's ranked 17th in the country. Now, I picked Baylor last week, and I should say last week I had 8 games I picked. I went 4-4. Combined with me going 2-1 in week 0, we're off to a 6-5 start this season. So we're a bit over 50% on the year. But Baylor 0-1 facing off against number 17 SMU 1-0 in Dallas at Gerald J. Ford Stadium. And I'm going to call me crazy, but give me the Baylor Bears. I'm doubling down. They lost when I picked them against Auburn last week, but I've got a feeling that Baylor's going to figure something out here and get a big win over SMU. And hey, BYU went to Gerald J. Ford Stadium last year in week 2 and ground out a win. Why can't the Baylor Bears do it and add some extra respect for the Big 12 along the way? So give me the Baylor Bears to beat SMU. Got Oklahoma State traveling to Oregon. This has been the Mike Gundy versus Dan Lanning Bowl, with Gundy accusing Oregon of spending money and Dan Lanning saying, yeah, so what? Makes me chuckle. The war of words going on. Nothing against Oklahoma State, but I do not see them winning in Autzen. Give me the Ducks to roll over the Cowboys. You got the border war being renewed, a reacquaintance of Kansas and Missouri for the first time in nearly 15 years, and give me the Kansas Jayhawks to upset Missouri. Our friends at FanDuel have Missouri as a favorite in this one, but I have got a feeling that Kansas, they got something cooking here, and Jalen Daniels leads them to a win in the renewal of the border war. Then also in the Big 12, looking forward to seeing how the Houston and Rice series goes. It's an intra-city rivalry. Rice is down, so give me Houston to roll over Rice, but it's a rivalry game. I wanted to make sure I mentioned that one here. I do think that the Red Cougs, as I like to call them, the Red Cougars, get the win over the Owls. And then finishing up in the Big 12, Arizona State is headed to Mississippi State. They're going to Starkville, aka Stark Vegas, and they have been practicing with the Cowbells out there at practice in Tempe. I don't necessarily think it's going to help them all that much because you can't really prepare for what the environment is in Starkville. BYU knows that very, very well from previous experiences at Davis Wade Stadium. But I do think that Arizona State, ranked 12th in the country, grinds out a win here. Mississippi State, it's going to be tight. I absolutely think it's going to be a game that's going to come down to the wire. But give me Arizona State by a nose in that one. I think it's an interesting game in and of itself. And then the other one I want to pick real quick, Army at Kansas State. Now, Army lost to Tarleton State, one of the FCS over FBS wins already this season. Kansas State has looked less than stellar. I hope to see Kansas State rebound here, but I think Army going to Manhattan, Kansas is going to be really, really upset about dropping their week 1 game. Give me the Army Black Knights to upset Kansas State. I know I'm supposed to be like a Big 12 homer here, but I'm not liking what I'm seeing from Kansas State so far. So hopefully the Wildcats is some reverse psychology and they make me look foolish. And then nationally, biggest game of the weekend, it's got College Game Day at it. It's the number 15 Michigan Wolverines facing off against the number 18 Oklahoma Sooners in Norman, Oklahoma. But give me the Michigan Wolverines. I don't know why, but I just have a feeling that Michigan, Bryce Underwood, Sharon Moore, going back, who by the way is an Oklahoma alum against his alma mater, I've got the Michigan Wolverines getting the win on the road over Oklahoma and putting a lot of pressure on the Sooners because that would be a really, really tough loss for them to stomach with Michigan coming in with a freshman quarterback. But John Mateer, Jaden Knott, everything that they've got going there in Norman. But I think I've got Michigan. I just got a feeling that Michigan's going to get the job done. So there's my picks for the weekend. You may agree, disagree, and fire back with you're crazy, Jake, or you're an absolute genius. But once again, we are 6-5 on the year so far, 4-4 last week. And I don't really like picking against the spread. It's not really kind of my cup of tea on that stuff. I just like to pick winners, some money line stuff. And those are my picks for the weekend. So that's going to do it. Oh, by the way, and I should mention this before we go, prediction for BYU and Stanford. I think the BYU is absolutely, head and shoulders better than Stanford right now. I'm going to say that Stanford won't be a test for BYU. It absolutely will be a test for the Cougars, but I'm thinking that BYU gets the job done. Give me BYU, let's say 30, Stanford 13. I think it's 17 points. So if you go by our friends at FanDuel, they don't cover, but it's close. And I think BYU gets the job done and moves to 2-0. So 30-13 is my pick. Make sure you comment below with your pick for BYU and Stanford, and we'll see who gets the closest. Looking back on it, we'll have a postcast coming out late Saturday night, probably early Sunday morning by the time I get done with my radio responsibilities. But Looking forward to it all the same. Enjoy the game and games this weekend, everybody. And as always, thank you for your support of this podcast. Do want to remind you guys, make sure you check out, it came out yesterday, Locked On Fire TV are presenting the College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year, Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Hawley, and of course, our Locked On local experts, a college football preview like only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season and also available on podcast platforms and YouTube and the like, but it's also brought to you by our friends over at Fire TV. So as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Enjoy the weekend, everybody, and be back here on Monday or maybe tomorrow morning. No, Sunday morning with our postcast edition. But as always, be an everydayer right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.